Hello and welcome. Today we're speaking with Tim McCarthy, who's chairman at ImmuPharma. How are you today, Tim?
I'm very well, thank you, Zach.
Okay, for people that don't know about ImmuPharma, could you tell us a little bit about what your company does?
Yes, of course. ImmuPharma is a company which is on the AIM market. It's been on the AIM market for just over 10 years now. And we concentrate in areas of immune diseases particularly. Our lead drug is a drug called Lupuzor for the treatment of lupus, but potentially for a number of other autoimmune diseases as well. And we have two other areas in the portfolio. One is what we call the Nuclear program, which is concentrating on cancer therapy. And then we have a unit based in Bordeaux in France, which we call Eureka, which is very much in metabolic disease, primarily diabetes.
Right, you're focusing on different fronts there, all very serious medical ailments, let's say. What's the lead part of your portfolio?
Well, the lead part of the portfolio, which has been very high profile over the last 2 or 3 years, is the drug which we call Lupuzor. And this is a drug in development for an autoimmune disease called lupus, which is quite a debilitating disease for many people around the world. And that's got towards the end of its clinical development program now. We reported phase 3 results for it earlier this year, and we've just put in place further development plans and progress plans for that, which we announced just a couple of weeks ago.
Right, I mean, there was quite a sharp reaction in the market in the spring when you unveiled what was going on with Lupuzor. What's the situation now?
Well, let me just recap those results so your viewers know. We reported phase 3 results for Lupuzor back in April this year, and unfortunately we didn't reach the statistical significance that we were looking for on what we call primary endpoint, and that's the result, if you like, the high-level result that everybody looks for in any clinical study. Now, having said that, the drug did show efficacy, and in everything that we measured, every measurement we took, we had superior efficacy over the placebo, which is obviously what you compare in any clinical study. But we didn't have enough of a delta, or enough of an advantage, if I can put it that way, over the placebo that we could say that we reached statistical significance. So that's why technically it's failed its study. We can't deny that, it failed that clinical trial. But at the same time, we did see efficacy, and we saw sort of levels of efficacy which we were expecting. In any clinical study also, though, when you look at any product profile, there are two things you look at. One is its efficacy, i.e. is it working, is it giving a benefit to patients? But almost as importantly is its safety profile, because all drugs generally will have side effects on patients for one reason or another. You put basically chemicals into somebody's body and you would expect a reaction. Now, fortunately for us, Lupuzor has always had a profile of a very benign safety profile, i.e. it doesn't show any side effects whatsoever, and that's very much down to the way that it interacts with the body, and in particular the immune system. And that again was confirmed in a phase 3 study, that we have an absolutely benign safety profile. So that's a big plus for the drug. So I understand why the market reacted in the way it did, because obviously everyone was expecting the results to be positive in the sense that it passed its statistical significance. It didn't. But I do want to emphasize that we have total confidence in the drug still. We do believe that as we take this drug further on, that we will be able to demonstrate for the benefit of the regulators and for anybody that we need to, that it is both an effective and a safe drug. And we've just announced recently some more initiatives on that drug to take it forward for its next steps.
Right, being totally non-medical, does that mean that, for instance, if you just tweak it a little bit, change a molecule here or there, the statistics would be better? And was it close enough so that if you had a different sample of people or a larger sample of people, it might have got over the line? Is that something that, are we talking that type of thing?
Yeah, there are a couple of things you mentioned there. One, there is no need to tweak the drug at all, because we believe the drug we have is the drug that will work and does work in our opinion. But it is very much down to clinical trial design, and for us and for many other companies in the industry, especially in the area of lupus, this is prescribed essentially by the regulators, in our case the FDA in the States. So we didn't have an awful lot of choice in the design of the study, but there is growing evidence that in trials such as this, especially in lupus, that the way that the trials are designed, that there is a very big placebo effect. So what I mean by that is that those patients on placebo, i.e. not receiving the active drug, because of the conditions of the trial, because of the concomitant medicine that they're also taking at the same time, which we call standard of care, that does have a big effect on their response within a clinical trial setting. Now, it's our belief that if the clinical studies are amended to take account of that, and there's a lot of lobbying at the moment within the industry and particularly in the lupus area to get the regulators to change those conditions, we believe that there will be a lot more success, especially for ourselves, in reaching those statistical endpoints.
So I mean, it's almost in the nature of the disease that makes it difficult to do these trials?
Yes, in the current way that they're designed, absolutely. And there's some very high-profile figures in the industry, i.e. Specialists in the area of lupus, that are absolutely lobbying to get these trials changed, because, of course, what they want is drugs on the market which they can treat their patients for obvious reasons, and they're being very frustrated. The fact that what on the surface are very good drugs and very safe drugs, especially one like Lupuzor, are being prevented by getting through these clinical studies because of their design. So that is, it's a bit of a problem which we have that in the industry generally, not just ourselves, which we need to solve. But notwithstanding that, what we have announced recently is, firstly, we have every confidence in the drug. We are continuing to invest in the drug and its progress forward. And there are two things that are currently happening. One was already happening anyway before the results of the study came out, and that is we announced a 6-month extension study, open label extension study. So that means any patients on the phase 3 study that wanted to enter into a further period of taking the drug, then they could do. And that was an initiative really we put in place following demand from physicians and patients on the phase 3 study, whilst they were still in the study, to say, is there any way that we can extend the period by which we can keep taking the drug, because clearly they were seeing some benefit. So we put in place what we call an open label 6-month extension study. So any patients that wanted to carry on from the phase 3 into the open label were eligible to do so. And they will all receive the drug. So it's not a clinical study as such, which is what we call randomized, double-blinded and placebo-controlled. It is open label. So everybody knows they're getting the drug. And we will get some very valuable data from that, and we should report that out second quarter next year.
So the drug is already out there being used, let's say?
Well, it's not in that sense, because that is still under a clinical trial auspices. But the other initiative we put in place is what's called a managed access program. And this, again, we announced a few weeks ago. Now, that is a way in which we can get the drug out there being used in what we call the real world. So this is not a clinical study. But I emphasize the drug hasn't been approved yet. It's still what we call unlicensed. But there is a way that we can give access to patients to Lupuzor through a managed access program. And what this means is that we can supply the drug free of charge to the patients under the responsibility of their individual physician. And they continue to take the drug. We're offering in the initial period for up to 24 months, and we're targeting up to 500 patients in this particular program. And again, I emphasize it's not a clinical study. So again, everybody knows they're getting the drug. They're going to be living in the real world. They're not going to be within a clinical study as such. And that's why we call it real world data, because not only do we allow them access to the drug, we collect data at the same time. And that data will be extremely valuable. And there's much evidence in previous years of companies using the data from a MAP program to supplement their regulatory filings, and the regulators are putting more and more store on the data from the programs that we've just initiated. So it's got many advantages. For us, it's a superb way of collecting data from a large number of patients at a fraction of the cost of running a clinical study. So to put that in context, if we have 500 patients on the MAP program, that will work out about twice as many patients that have been on the active drug in all the clinical studies that we've done to date. So that's a lot of data. And in terms of the cost, it's a fraction of the cost of the last clinical study. It's a tenth of the cost of the last clinical study, which we've just run. And we're in a very robust financial situation. We raised £10 million at the beginning of this year, and we just posted our interim financial results showing we've got £9 million on the balance sheet at the 30th of June. So this MAP program is not going to put us under any financial pressure whatsoever, but we as a company will get a lot of benefit from it. And just importantly, the patients themselves will have access to the drug, which they wouldn't ordinarily.
So there's a silver lining to what's happened in the way, from your corporate point of view.
Well, I think what we are doing is demonstrating to the market and to patients as well that we absolutely have faith in this drug. We believe in it. We believe the trial was, as I said before, it failed in terms of reaching its statistical endpoint, but that was more about trial design rather than an issue with the drug itself. And the silver lining is the fact that we can get this drug to patients very quickly. We don't have to wait for that full regulatory approval. And that, to me, is why we're in this business. We're in this business to develop drugs to benefit patients.
Well, the stock market is a strange place. It anticipated before it factored in that the clinical trial would go ahead but smoothly and successfully. Mm-hmm. Now it would appear it's factored in the other scenario of nothing happening at all. Presumably, the reality is somewhere in between as things stand. How do you live with that type of scenario? I mean, how do you manage your day-to-day activities?
Well, we are a public company, and we have to, we have to just continue to run our business operationally as we would even if we were a private company. The market will take its own view on what it believes the valuation is, the share price is, and I've been in the market long enough to never argue with the market as such, because I'm not going to sit here as any chairman or chief exec and say my share price is wrong or I'm undervalued, because the market will always value it where it is, and you have to take that as the true number. Do I believe that there is a lot more upside in the share price and the valuation? Absolutely I do. And if you take the prospects of Lupuzor in terms of its commercial prospects and what that would mean to ImmuPharma, then clearly the share price is wrong. But I am pragmatic enough and long in the tooth enough, unfortunately, to know that's not how the markets work. So by doing this interview with you, for example, I'm hoping to get the message out there that the company absolutely believes in this drug. We are doing everything we can to progress it, and we have every faith that it will come good in the end.
Tim McCarthy, Chairman at ImmuPharma, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.